Greetings! In this video I'll be painting an Intercessor from the Deathstrike chapter. I've used an all Intercessor model for this, and printed a pauldron with their chapter Armour like I usually do. Some information about that's in the video description. There's not much to say about this one, but I wanted to try the vivid blue and yellow shown in the references, so here we are. I've started with a black primer, though a lighter one may speed up the base coating process if you wanted to go for a grey instead. Now for the actual painting, starting it with a Caledor sky for the base coat. This is a very strong blue, without the red pigments that Skrag blue has in it. I figured it would work well for the scheme. With the base coat done, I switched to Black Legion to paint the undersuit details and anything else that needed to be black. This is mainly a cleanup step after the messy base coat. Onto the little details now, starting with Rhinox hide as the base coat for the leather. Then onto Zandri dust to base coat the purity seal parchment and the skull on the base. Screamer pink was used for the purity seal wax. I like to do these details in this order as it allows me some drying time between layers. With the Rhinox hide dry, I used some Skrag brown as the first highlight. This was an edge highlight, and some thin passes to make some fake bumps in the material that works nicely to add some detail to the otherwise featureless bits. Ushabti bone was next, applied over the paper on the surfaces that I felt were in the most light, and as a rough highlight over the skull on the base. Pink Horror finishes the wax, doing the raised details in the middle and around the edge of each seal. For the leather, Deathclaw brown is the final touch, doing small scratches over most of the surface but focusing on the raised areas that I created with the previous coat. Screaming Skull finishes the paper and the skull, applied on the sharpest edges. I used a Tyranid skull on the base as a nod to the Deathstrike's engagement in the Octarius War, where they defended the Gydisk system against Tyranid forces. Sticking with the skull, I tried some Agrax Earthshade and then a little bit of Berserker Bloodshade as a wash, applying one after the other and letting them mix together on the model to create a nice mix of blood and grime. Now onto the fiddly bits, starting with Mephiston red for the eye lenses, wrist lights, the scope, and the little wires around the model. This model only has one wire on the left arm, thankfully. To highlight those bits, I used some Evil Sunz Scarlet. This was mostly applied in the centre or raised bits of each piece, avoiding the recessed edges. Wild Rider red was then used to further highlight the eye lenses, wrist lights, and scope, but not the wires. Lugganath orange was then used as the final highlight, trying for the centre of a glow effect. This was only done on the eyes and the wrist lights. Now for the final details before the markings, starting with some Mechanicus standard grey as an edge highlight and general weathering pass for the bolt rifle. I then switched back to Black Legion to paint some little scribbles and a tactical marking on the purity seal parchment. A brush with a fine tip and shaky hand helps for a nice and quick effect. Now for the markings. I wanted to avoid yellow looking green, so I decided to try tinting white instead. I used some Ulthorn Grey, a reliable favourite of mine, to paint in the markings. This consisted of the chapter armorial, of course, but also a squad number on the knee, the battle line tactical marking on the other pauldron, and a helmet stripe. The arrow was a bit difficult to set up, but I wanted to have that hollow design shown in the references. I put some rough guides and slowly connected them. The result was a bit skewed, so I went back and forth with Caledor Sky and Ulthorn Grey until I was happy with the shape. The helmet stripe is fairly simple by comparison, filling in the mohawk event bit and a little bit over the edge, then bringing it down towards the eyes. For the Death Strike, the colour of the helmet stripe dictates company, using codex colours, yellow being second company. Now for the tinting part. I used some Flash Gitz yellow and applied it all over the Ulthuan grey, not worrying if a little bit went over the edge, as it's more important for there not to be little dots of white sticking through. With the yellow base coated, I then used some Phalanx yellow as an edge highlight to increase the brightness a little. Now back to Caledor Sky to clean up where I went over with the yellow, and to do some little scratches on the yellow markings to help hide the asymmetry. I also cleaned up some little spots where I'd gone over elsewhere at this point. Sticking with the blue armour, I used Teclis blue as the highlight for the Caledor Sky. I thought it'd come out brighter than this, but it's not bad. It's got a nice enchanted feel to it. I can imagine it looking nice with a gloss finish for some Thousand Suns. Now for some weathering, mainly because the blue highlight was lacking in strength to my eye. Some Rhinox hide was used to dot the edge highlights and where I did some scratches in the previous pass. Some were going over the markings too, which helped tie those in further. Finally, we're onto the metallics now. I used some Retributor armour for the winged skull on the bolt rifle. It's the only fancy greeble on this model this time around, so that's it for the gold. For the other metallics, I used gunmetal grey and applied it over the bolt rifle casing, the Imperialis on the torso, and the armour and power pack details. Duraluminium was next. I used to highlight the previous gunmetal bits, but I also used it to fully base coat the Imperialis on the torso. The reference shows this as a light silver, so I'll go brighter than this in the next step. Now for some chrome. Used to highlight the Imperialis and give it a really strong shine. Now with all the acrylics done, I moved over to the black enamel panel liner. This was applied over most surfaces like usual, allowing it to emphasise the recessed panel lines and leaving some grime on the smooth panels. It's a quick step that really ties the model together nicely. After I left it to dry for an hour or two, I applied my usual basing method, painted the base rim black, then sealed everything with some ultramatte varnish. And here we have it, an Intercessor from the Death Strike Second Company. I'm very happy with this one. The weathering and varnish helped bring an otherwise really bright paint scheme into a more believable finish. I'm especially pleased with the purity seals. When I was assembling the model, those purity seals were fully straight, and I had to cut the back of the wax off to fit it around the pauldron trim. When the plastic cement had dried, I bent the parchment down to fit the pose. Tiny bit of work, but it was definitely worth it, and especially so with how nice I managed to get the text to appear on them. Moving on to the markings, I think the method I used to tint them was successful, so much so that I think I'll be doing that again in the future. It avoided the usual pitfalls I've experienced with yellows over darker colours, and it didn't take too many layers, so there wasn't any residual texture added, like you can get from the darker yellows and brighter white paints. And it was fairly quick to do as well. No need for dozens of thin glazes, and the white was one coat with a second just to smooth out the edge. Then a single pass of Flash Gitz yellow, so I'd call that a complete win. I've tried similar with contrast paints in the past, but they can be unpredictable with their transparent nature. So I think I'll be trying this technique again with other colours in the future. But anyway, that's all I've got for this video. If you have any requests for chapters, let me know in the comments, as well as any questions or if you do something different where you painting this chapter. I'm all about experimenting with different recipes and techniques, and I'm sure others might find it useful as well. Otherwise, yeah, hope you stick around for the next one.